All right, welcome everybody to the Sprint Jump Throw Performance Podcast. I'm your co-host Joel Reinhardt, along with Andrew Cormier. Very excited today to have on the show John Parenti. He is the Director of Sports Nutrition for the Miami Dolphins. Thanks for coming on, John.
I appreciate it, fellas. Excited to get this rolling.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So first question we'll kind of roll into, I met you when you were at the University of Minnesota when I was interning there. What I didn't realize is you were the first ever director of nutrition there. So what were the steps that you kind of had to take to get into that, to just get that whole kind of program started? And then is there anything that you kind of wish you did differently involved with that?
Yeah, so shoot, man, Minnesota, that feels like it was like 5 years ago already, especially during this time, like right now, like shoot, like 1 week kind of feels like it's been like 10 years already. But yeah, so being the first director at Minnesota, shoot, man, it was kind of, one of those like opportunities, especially for me, like it was my first director position. So, I still remember like my first day there. They kind of gave me the keys to my office and told me good luck, like, literally. And I was like, okay, I appreciate it. But like, so like the first couple of steps taken, like for me, I remember in my office, I was like trying to jot down all these ideas and like, okay, like we could do this and this and this, but like I'm sitting there going like, I have no idea how this place operates. So luckily for me, like, they kind of told me, take care of football when you first get there, just make sure that's kind of running afloat. Luckily I had Brittany Francis, or Brittany Perry now, lay like some, a foundation for football, because they did have something, but it was just on the football side. So nothing for like on the Olympic side for like hockey and soccer and volleyball. It was all like strength coaches that kind of ran that. Whereas like, they kind of had some education and some help from, Brittany and, those who kind of ran it, or the interns. So for me, like, I was like, I just need to get to know everyone. I just kind of need to, get a feel of what's been done before. What would be the best thing to kind of, whether it's education or whether it's, handling something, like, what am I trying to say? Handling something like, hands-on, and kind of going that route. So, that was the first thing for me, was just build a relationship with like the staff, the employees, and just really kind of get a feel of where everyone's at with the things that they've done before and what they would like to see too from like, a dietitian on staff and as this like resource, like what can I do for you? And also too, just get a feel of, what are some short-term and long-term goals that we can try and accomplish. Anything that I would have done differently? Probably not, to be quite honest with it, just because, I don't really like to look at it from that aspect of like, oh man, I really wish I would have done this differently and whatnot. But, for me, I just, is what the best thing that we probably could have done in that specific scenario and that specific time. But, Minnesota, it was a great place for me. I've worked with a lot of great people that, allowed me to really just do what, the things that I thought was best within reason too. Obviously the NCAA gives you a lot of things you can and cannot do. Every school is going to be different in the populations that you work with and teams and sports. And that was a great thing about Minnesota, was like, yeah, I think we had like 23 sports or something like that. So every team presented like its own different, challenges and stuff like that. So, it was a great opportunity for me from that aspect as well.
That's awesome. And even looking at just some of I know you did a lot of great work and just educating people, and you did workshops and everything like that. Like, how did you kind of decide on those, if you want to call them like pillars for the athletes? How did you maybe address what was like most lacking, or how did you kind of go about that whole thing?
Yeah, so I think I got to give a lot of credit to the people that I've worked with before in terms of like education and the other schools or universities that I've been at. And, like I said, like every school, every sport, like they're going to have their different, like what works for their athletes. You know what I mean? So, and that's where like sitting down with like, the strength staff or the sports medicine staff and just kind of getting a feel of what's the best thing for that sport. Like maybe it's, these guys really just, or, these athletes really don't understand like, you know, pre-workout fueling and post-workout fueling. It's just like we don't have the resources. We just kind of need like quick tips, or these athletes are really receptive to like education, like handouts, or it'd be really cool if you were just around like at practice. So, they ask questions because that's where they tend to ask them those questions, or be at a lift or something like that. So, um, I always just felt like, okay, you can have from an education standpoint, like the things that the bulk of things that you really just want them to understand, like maybe 4, 5 things or whatever it is. And that's where like my mentors just along the way just kind of helped me understand, like, keep it very simple and keep it just very easy for them to understand. If it's just like one word zingers or like just, whatever it is, just have them be able to understand it so they can take it with them throughout their life and all that kind of stuff, or throughout their careers. So I think that really kind of helped me kind of understand that process and just getting a feel from other different staff members, like, okay, what's going to help me kind of carry that out. So like, for instance, like for us down here, hydration is like the biggest thing. So I think like we kind of chatted or joked a little bit about like how hard it is training down here in the heat. So hydration for us is just like a huge thing and something that we have to like emphasize tremendously and like every single day, and like stay on top of our guys with hydration and making sure that they're drinking plenty of fluids throughout the day, and I think something that's just like lacking would probably be like the routine part. I just think that along with hydration for us is like a really big thing. Like, I mean, guys really just need to understand like the routine part, because like, with nutrition, like there's so many different things and information that gets like, talked about, or they hear that kind of just jacks up with their routines. And they hear about intermittent fasting, they hear about like different types of diets and like carnivore, vertical diet, like vertical diet there. Like, not to say that like those diets or anything are bad, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, they get information from different people, they get it from different places, and they don't know what to do with it. And to me, that kind of screws up like their routine, and they kind of get away from like the most important things, which I guess really kind of ties into like, is like for me, it's just like, how much are you drinking throughout the day? Are you eating the meals that you need to? Are you getting breakfast? Are you getting lunch? Are you getting dinner? Are you fueling around workouts? If you're taking supplements, what kind of supplements are you taking? And like, what do you know about that? What did you hear about those supplements? Was it some, guy at GNC, or was it like, from someone else, or was it something that you just saw in the media? So for me, it's just understanding those parts of it. It's just keeping it simple, and it's just like, okay, that's what I want our guys to accomplish, is make sure you're drinking fluids, making sure you're fueling around workouts, making sure, you're getting enough fuel throughout the day to make sure that you're able to do what you need to do. So, but again, what I think is lacking is just that understanding of the importance of a routine, sleeping, eating, hydrating, and doing the simplest things, and just staying on a schedule, which ties into the consistency part of it, which is all over the place. I mean, Joel, you've probably seen it too when we were together in Minnesota, like on the football side. Like, it's just, guys just get information from all over the place, and it's just like sometimes it's hard for them to stay like on a schedule, and hard for them to like be consistent with things and keep up with it, especially when they have like classwork and tutoring, and they got to be somewhere. They don't have a car, so they got to find transportation. So when all that stuff is like on their plate, and the unique thing with college is that changes every single semester. So the routine part of it is crazy. They have like 8 different routines over the course of like their entire careers. So it's just like, having them understand like the principles of just like the basics, I think really just kind of goes far more than, intermittent fasting, or like let's figure out which supplement's gonna be best for you and all that kind of stuff. So it's like just sticking to the basics is just like what's helped me in my career and like getting things across to some guys. And like, especially at our level, and sorry if I'm getting long winded with this, but like, um, we have a unique range of ages on our roster. Like you can have someone that's like 38 years old, and then you can have someone that's like 22 years old. So it's like, how do you relay that information to other people, or like how do you relay that information to those types of guys? Like how I would give information to a guy that's a lot older, say he's been in the league for 15 years versus a rookie, it looks far different. Vet that's been in the league for 15 years might be like, okay, I got it, like I've been doing this for a long time. So but that's just depending on your relationship with that specific person too, and like you know maybe he says something like how he's really sore. It's like, well, okay, well, have you thought about this? Like, it's kind of up to you if you want to do it, but it's something that could go, a long way for you. It could help out. And they're like, yeah. Right, okay, I'll give it a shot. Why not? And that's a huge win for you versus a rookie where you might have to be a little bit, more stringent with them, be on top of them, be a little bit more persistent in that aspect and staying, on top of that because you're trying to reinforce a behavior change. You know what I mean? Because depending on where they come from in colleges, and that's a unique thing about this realm is like you might get someone who comes from Middle Tennessee versus someone who comes from like LSU, Alabama, and those schools who have had tremendous amount of resources. So like their level of understanding might be a little bit different. So from like the professional and college aspect, that's where like there's the differences and there's the similarities. Whereas like in college, you know, you have no idea where they're coming from, you know. Whereas at this level, you kind of have an idea. You can kind of pinpoint who's had a little bit more nutrition education, who had a little bit more resources, a familiarity with things, and you know, that's where you just kind of assess, build the relationships first with them, and then just kind of slowly build into the education part of it and what you want them to understand. Obviously, you want to set standards, you want to do all that kind of stuff, but you really just have to. For me, you have to get them to know you, understand you, and feel comfortable with you too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's almost like the absolute perfect plan that only gets executed like 3 out of 7 days is not as good as like a pretty good plan that's getting executed every single day.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah, you touched on it a little bit, talking about how important it was for you at Minnesota to kind of be around lifts, be around practices.
Mm-hmm.
How important do you think it is for somebody in a nutrition role to, maybe have a decent understanding of, training, whether it's through training themselves or having played a sport or, just overall understanding like the nitty gritty of what goes into being an athlete? I know we trained together that short time we were at Minnesota, and just like seeing you, being interested in strength and conditioning, being interested in
Call me a meathead.
training and what goes into like physical activity essentially. And
Right.
how much do you think that helps in terms of like relating to the athletes?
I think it helps a lot trying to, especially relating to football athletes. For me, I think it's helped a tremendous amount just because I think the athletes kind of see you in an uncomfortable environment or in their environment, if that makes sense. I mean, I don't want to call the weight room an uncomfortable environment, like you guys are setting an uncomfortable environment, but
Yeah.
but I just think it kind of shows that, you're in it with them a little bit. To me, that's always kind of helped. And for me, that's always just been like an important part of like who I am and kind of what I've done in my career is just, be interested in training and understanding what they're going through. Cause that helps me, understand like training cycles, like in season training versus off season training. Well, like the nutrition part of that is also different too. Like in season, like nutrition is completely different from off-season nutrition and the goals that you're trying to set, and so on and so forth. So having a that, or not like I need to know the minutia of periodization and programming and all that kind of stuff, but just having that understanding of training, what it's like, what the athletes go through. Like you go through like, a conditioning session, you know what that player is going through. You know how they feel generally after that, training session, or like I'm going to know like what it feels like after a 2-hour practice in 110-degree heat and humidity. But, you know, I understand the process of getting ready for that. I know that preparation. I know what that looks like. So I think it helps a lot. But for me, like if someone's trying to get into nutrition, I'm not going to say like you need to become a strength conditioning coach. You need to,
Yeah.
go through all that. But like I think it helps to have an understanding. Like learn from your strength conditioning coaches, learn from your athletic trainers. Like that's what I tell people. Like when they come in and ask, like, how do I get in the field or whatever, or is there any tips? Like learn from everyone, like have an open mind, and just, you never know what you're going to learn from someone. And I always just, I don't know, I guess it's just kind of what I gravitate towards, like, with strength conditioning coaches, like I like understanding their thought process behind things, because it's very organized, it's very detailed, it's very methodical. And there's always a how and why behind it too. Like obviously, why do we want to get stronger, or why do we get stronger? Is because we're becoming more efficient at things. Okay, and it's just kind of helps you understand, the whole aspect of the athlete that they're, training. But then every athlete in itself is different in what they respond to, and that's what we see here. As some guys don't feel comfortable back squatting or whatever, or they have an injury or something, and we're just trying to keep them healthy. I think that's where like here, like you get really creative with like, not that I'm going to speak from like a strength conditioning perspective, but like you just get to see like how you adapt to like kind of what I was talking about with like the nutrition education. Like you have like the general overview, but then like you have like the one-off type things where you change things for someone because that fits their needs, that fits their routine, that fits their overall individual goals, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just having like general principles always to work off of is huge, I think, in any field. And even another side that I almost looked at from the nutrition, sports nutrition individual, like training or having an idea of it, is I think it was Wendler when we talked to him. It was just like giving kids or athletes in this case, like something also to believe in, not just like your credentials, but also that you have other habits that kind of very clearly show what you're trying to get done or what you actually are willing to do, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And that's where like, yeah, you have that objective for them. It's like, these are the things I want you to accomplish every single day. Just keep it simple. It's like 3 or 4 steps, like boom, 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 boom. Okay. Can you do it? No? Okay. Let's go back to the drawing board and figure out what you will do every day. Can you get, can you just get like your post-workout shake every single day? Yes. Okay. Boom. That's what we're going to focus on for this week. And then we're going to build upon that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, you touched on it now and a little bit earlier about getting on the same page. You know, like when you were brand new at Minnesota, touching on, where is the nutritional education coming from before you got there, essentially? Mm-hmm. And I know you probably feel this in your soul, but nutrition is definitely a realm where everybody thinks they can chime in on it, like in the general sense of society. So how important is it for you when you get to some place, identifying maybe some preconceived notions of not just the athletes, but the staff that's around, because if so-and-so strength coach is telling everybody that carbs are the devil, like, things like that, how important is for you to get a sense of where all sorts of nutrition information is coming from anywhere in the building, I guess?
Yeah, so I think that's where like it kind of helped me when I first got there. Like I met with all the strength coaches, I met with all the coaches, I met with all sports medicine and some administration too, and not that pertains to the question, but like I that's where I tried to really just kind of dissect, like, okay, what was the information that was given to the athletes?
Yeah.
Okay, where is that coming from? Like, not that I'm quizzing them, like, well, where did you learn that? Or like kind of telling them like, well, that's wrong. It was just always like getting their perspective, you know, and building the relationship with them and like having an understanding of like, okay, I can see where you're, I can see why you might think that is correct or whatever. And then just kind of working, you know, kind of working backwards sometimes where you kind of have to like, some people, they're going to have that personalities where it's just like boom, 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 boom. Like they're just really hardcore and like strict on this. They're adamant about it. And that's where you kind of have to work with them and sometimes kind of put the ego aside a little bit and like, okay, how can I work with this? How can I, you know, perspective and this mindset over time? Because sometimes that matters more too, where it's like, um, you're the working relationship that has to work too, because then the athletes will see too, like, oh, these two don't work together. I don't know who to get my information from, because sometimes they might have a relationship better with the strength coach versus you, or someone else might have a relationship better with the nutritionist or dietitian versus the strength coach. So it's like the cohesive nature between like the strength coach and the dietitian or wherever they're getting the nutrition education from needs to coincide. And that's where like you just have that relationship with them, see the perspectives of where they're coming from, and just like, well, this is my side of it too. It can't always just be like their side and whatnot. It's like, okay, I see where you're coming from, but like this is kind of what I believe. How can we work together on this? Like, this is the message I want conveyed too. And that's where at Minnesota it was like, it was so refreshing coming in, because everyone was like, oh, like, great, a nutritionist, I don't have to do this anymore. So what message do you want us to convey? And that was a great part of it, where it's like, okay, like these are the things that I believe in, these core principles, but I also want to have a sensitivity to what you've been preaching as well, because that's probably the last message that they heard. And having going into something that's brand new, where it's like, okay, now we got to start all over again. It's like, let's capitalize on what you were teaching them and how it kind of intertwines with my message too. And then we can just roll with it from there and, kind of figure out what's best. Or, some coaches were like, just do your thing, whatever. Like, I was like, all right, great. Like, we'll start from scratch. But, again, it's just, to me, it's always been about building the relationships with the staff, because, the players, athletes, they're going to see that. And if that doesn't work, then, they're probably going to go get the information from the internet. And you also kind of have to have like a welcoming like presence about you too, where they feel comfortable about like asking you questions. Because like, and that kind of pertains to being around at lifts and being comfortable in that environment, having that understanding of training, they're going to be more apt to ask you questions as well. And like feel comfortable coming up to you and like, okay, this is the type of person that I trust with the information, because they probably, have an understanding of it, they live it, and so on and so forth. But to get back to that, like that's where, like for me, like I always go back to the staff and kind of figure out too, like the information that they've gotten, where it's coming from, how true is it, or is it just like one of these trends and fads? But that's also too a great learning experience for like young professionals, or it has been for me, because it's like if they're getting information from somewhere, and say it's like the first time that I've heard something, it's like homework for me a little bit, where you just go back and like you read about stuff, like working with Cal. He always, I mean, shoot, man, he's a wealth of knowledge, as you guys know. And it was kind of an eye-opening experience for me, like when the information he told me, because sometimes it's like not what dietitians preach all the time, but like it's the other side of it. It's maybe what can be perceived as the controversial side of nutrition, where it's like, I'm not going to discredit that, because, maybe there's some truth to it, and I'm going to look into it. And it's a great learning opportunity for me. So kind of having that, like, I'm never gonna, say, no, that's crazy. Some things they're a little out there, but look into it, because more than likely your athletes are looking into that part of it as well. Carnivore may seem absolutely wild and crazy. Like, to me, every diet has its time, its place. It can fit for someone. If it's successful for someone, like, sure, like, we'll work with it. Am I going to tell my guys, like, hey, you should do carnivore, you should do this, because all these people are getting results and you're getting anecdotal results and all this stuff? Like, no, I'm not going to go out preaching it, but, like, more than likely, like, my athletes are going to ask me questions about it because they've heard or they've researched it themselves or whatever. And sometimes with what they know, or what they've researched, and kind of taken off guard a little bit. But, like, to the point with, like, Cal, like, you got to look up that kind of stuff. You got to be receptive to that kind of information, because more than likely the players are going to look that kind of stuff up. And if you don't have the or answers to it, they're probably gonna be like, nah, okay, you're just going to keep telling me the same thing. Carbs are important. You feel around my workouts. Like, if you just stick to that same, like, narrative all the time and not have, like, the understanding of all the stuff outside of that, then that's where you kind of lose that trust and lose that credibility, to me, over time. And that's my general professional opinion. If, like, people in my profession are listening to this, they're probably like, hey, no, I'm crazy. But to me, that's just, I think that's important, having that understanding of a little bit of, not everything, but having an understanding of, like, the stuff that may not philosophy. You need to look into it a little bit, because you never know what's going to come up. And that's the thing with nutrition. It's changing all the time. I remember when I first started getting into it, like, like, middle school, like, it was the whole, like, 10 meals a day. I think that's what, like, that's what you need to do to burn fat and maximize muscle. And it's just like, all right, like, now, and then that's a completely different narrative. Now it's like intermittent fasting and telling people not to eat and following these, like, mimicking fasting diets. Like, man, nutrition is just crazy, man. Like, it's all over the place. It looks like an EKG. But, like, that's why it's like staying up with the trends and learning from people. And, like, you learn from individuals like yourselves, because you guys look into stuff from a nutrition standpoint. I think, Joel, you said it too. Like, people can have their, like, okay, I know a little bit about nutrition, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of veer off and educate our guys on this kind of stuff because I think that works. Or, like, you know, Nate Wells was a perfect example of that too. Like, I mean, he was just the type of person that, like, for people that are listening, Nate Wells was an intern at Minnesota, but he loved research. He loved looking into things. Like, if you gave him, like, a small breadcrumb, that guy went, like, 1,000 miles with it at the speed of, like, 100, like, and he was always come back to the information. And, like, it's information that, like, okay, look, man, I didn't think about that. I didn't know that. But, like, you can learn something from everyone, whether they come up with crazy stuff or whatever. It's just like, sorry, I'm going off on tangents, but, like, that's, to me, that it's been an important part for me in my career too, is just to learn from everyone. And, whether it's crazy, whether it makes sense or not, like, there's something to it. You look into it, and, don't always be so dismissive and like, no, that's no.
Yeah. I think that's something too. I mean, even people in our field could, like, strength conditioning wise, could benefit from, of just not throwing everything out, maybe with, and my position's probably one of the most well-known ones, probably for at least younger coaches. Like, I've been at 4 different schools essentially in the past, like, 4 years, whether it was, like, interning or trying to be an assistant somewhere. And it's like, if I wanted to change everything that the previous coach had taught the athletes, I was basically like, hey, forget everything that last person said to you. It's all useless. Now you have to listen to me. Like, I wouldn't get anywhere.
Right.
So it's like, what are the biggest changes that are going to help the most? And then what is also good from the previous coach they had that I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Like, let's stick with that a little bit, or how they were taught to do something. And then I can just build off of that, instead of scrap everything you've ever seen. And then now you have to try and just go from zero as a senior and undergrad. Like, good luck.
Yeah, and I think that just creates an unsustainable environment too. You know what I mean? Just like you try and build everything from scratch or wipe the slate clean. We're going to do something completely different. Obviously, in some circumstances, like you might need to do that, right? But like, I don't know. For me, just if I were to come into Minnesota, it's just like, all right, we're going to completely erase what was done, like on the football side, and we're going to do things new. It's like people are going to look at you and go like, okay, time to see results, because that's the environment that we work in. You know what I mean? Like if that's not seen, then it's like, yeah, okay, then it just year two is going to be challenging, because then you got to keep up with all again. And year 3, 4, 5, and it's just like, oh my god, it's exhausting. And then it just becomes a revolving door. You know what I mean? For yourself, because you can't stay anywhere for a while unless you're just like coming up. You know what I'm saying? But like, um, yeah, I think it's important too to always get the perspective of like, yeah, if you're coming in from somewhere, like you have to understand how things were kind of run, because that's what the athletes are used to, and that kind of helps create that like culture part of it, where it's just you kind of have to have that understanding.
What would you say are just some common misconceptions that people might have about sports nutrition in general, sports nutritionists, even if you want to talk about just like terrible ideas related to nutrition, whatever it is that you want to touch on?
Oh God. So I think from like a dietitian's perspective, or like just nutrition overall, I think people have a misconception of like that we're the food police from like working wise, like you're just going to be the person that like looks over my shoulder and what I eat. It's funny, like sometimes like especially working in football, like they'll chirp at you. And there's a Pat Peterson word for you. They'll chirp at you. But you know, like food police, you got the police in here, or something like that. But like, I think that's a big misconception that we're just meal planners. Okay, that we just sit behind a computer and we write meal plans all day. Okay, when that's not what we do, like especially in like the athletic setting. For us, like it's a lot of got to think about like travel, meals at like hotels, and stuff that we're going to bring on the road to make sure the guys have. And if like you have like guys that are on different like routines, or you have like are not on different routines, but like they have things that are a part of their routine, like you got to make sure to have all that kind of stuff available, or just have the resources available so the guys like feel comfortable with what they have. You know what I mean? So I think that's a big misconception. People think that we're like policing people when it comes to food. We're telling them what they have to eat, and I think that's a big one too. Like have to eat versus like this is the guidelines that you should follow to make things sustainable for yourself. So I think that's a really big misconception. And the meal planning part of it too is like we're not just the type of people just to sit behind a computer and just give educations and handouts and all that kind of stuff. My role here, a lot of it is just helping guys with their individual routines, because all these guys are going to be different, especially kind of where they're at in their careers versus like college, where you're really trying to enforce a behavior change. You know what I mean? And that says a lot too from like the strength conditioning aspect. They're trying to kind of reinforce like behaviors within like the weight room. It's a lot of teaching, a lot of movement type stuff that you're trying to educate guys on, and from like mitigating like injury type stuff. You know what I mean? And but I think that's just where like people just kind of not, I don't want to say don't understand, but it's just early on people just think like you're like the weight loss type person. You know what I mean? Like you're just here to educate our big guys. But it's so much more than that. You're trying to again change behavior changes within people too, but you're also just trying to set them up in a position that's like, okay, you want them to understand nutrition outside of like the walls of like your end, because I think a lot of times we can get very siloed within our own facility, and like we don't know what these players are doing outside of here. So how can you create, a system in place and have those nutrition education pillars or whatever it is, to where guys have an understanding of, okay, this is how I need to take care of myself outside this building. Okay. Because I think that's a big part of it too, is just like having them understand that aspect of it. It's not just what you do within here. It's, the 90% that you do outside the building too, which is sleep, eat, grocery shop floor, all that kind of stuff. So it's almost like the logistics within their life that you're trying to, educate them on too, because you can't hand them a piece of paper and say, good luck. Like, what are the resources that you're going to give them to, make them successful outside the building? Do they know how to grocery shop? Do they know how to, look at like a nutrition facts label? It may seem like really easy to like myself, to you, and to some other people, but to them, it's like, I have no idea what this means. I've never looked at that. I've never had to look at this before. I was always just under the impression I could eat and just burn it off or whatever. But it's like, for me, like, you're trying to educate them on like, okay, well, this league's a lot about like longevity and how you kind of keep yourself together. So like, you really need to understand, like, when we're not going to have meals 24/7 here. You're not going to have these resources like, that we have, these supplements or whatever that we have lying around here. So kind of need to understand, like, how can you take this and put this in like outside the building? Can you grocery shop? Do you know how much fluids to drink when you're at home? Like, are you thinking about drinking at home, or just being in the facility, you know, that kind of autopilot system where it's like, okay, if I'm here, I need to drink or something like that. Sleep's another big part of it. Like, do you understand the importance of sleep? Do you like, yeah, and just things like that where it's just like you kind of don't think about it a little bit. So I think we're so much more than like meal planners. I mean, that's part of it, but like more than that. And I think that's a big misconception um, that kind of revolves around the profession.
Mm. So this is something that I think all support staffs around sports can kind of fall into, or, maybe be judged from this aspect is, it's easy to just see wins and losses and say, oh, they're successful or they're not. When we know there's nuance to that. You could have a team go no, and their support staff could be terrible, and you could have a team go 0-16, and they could have an amazing support staff. So how do you, as a nutritionist, what kind of structures do you look at for yourself in terms of like, am I being successful in my position or not? Like, what points do you look at for yourself in that aspect?
The thing is just looking at what are you getting the guys to do what you want them to do. You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of hard, like a nutrition, like to measure that. Like you can say like, oh, body composition, but there's thousands of other things that kind of play into that too, like with strength conditioning, their lifestyle, all that kind of stuff. But it's like, are we getting our guys to do what we want them to do? And like, how many? I think if like, especially in our realm, if guys are kind of walking all over you, like that's typically not a good thing. And you're just kind of there saying, well, guys, like, I need you to do this. And like, yeah, get out of here. You know what I mean? But like, I think if, guys coming up to you and asking you questions and like wanting to know nutrition information, obviously like you're doing something right. You know what I mean? And if like they're listening to you, like, hey, well, I did this, I'm working on my hydration. Like I want to be able to show you like what I'm doing. Like if they're proud of that, then I think that's kind of a win for you, at least for me. Like, and that I'm big on like the trust, the relationship part of stuff, and just like also seeing like the types of things that we go through. Like it's like taking like, let's call it like, beat shot. That's a big thing for someone. Like, hey, like, I want you guys to take this because I think it helps with this, this, and this, and this. Okay. And if you go through all of it, obviously, like guys are listening to you, that's a big win. That's successful. So if guys are utilizing you as a resource, they're coming up to you, they're doing the things that you're telling them to do, from hydration, from pre and refueling, and also just kind of taking care of themselves, like, in the meal room and doing that kind of stuff. And they're like, hey, like, I want to get on a meal prep service to stay on my nutrition because that's going to help me. like help me out with that. Like that's a big success. And that's kind of for me how I measure it. It's not so much like I'm gonna, get so zoned in on numbers. I mean, that's a big part of it. We're looking at like body composition. That's kind of like the tell all with like how guys are doing. But I think, when guys come up to you wanting information, they're doing the information, they follow up with you, and you're following up with them too, because that's another big thing is like you just give them something and they don't, or you don't follow up with them, and then it's just like, okay, this guy was just doing this just kind of like, cover his butt or whatever, you know what I mean? Or he's just doing this just because he was told to. But if you have that persistent follow up with them and then they're following up with you, I think to me that's, a big piece of like showing like you're getting to someone, they're always trying to reach out for you for information. They're not going to like other people. I think to me that means more, all the other stuff, because that means like they're trying and they're listening to you and they want to listen to you and they're coming back for more.
Mm-hmm. I thought I had, it just popped in my head when you said stuff about the like nutrition police and just like people always having comments. I know it's something I deal with just being a strength coach from family members of like justifying their workout routine to me. Do you have like family and friends that are like, oh, I was so bad the other day at dinner, like I had dessert? Like, does that come up for you a lot or no? Is that a thing?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. It's, I went on a massive bender this week. Like, get on the treadmill for like 3 hours. And yeah, that always comes up, especially with like family and friends. Like, it's hysterical. Like, I'm on a group chat right now with some of my buddies, and like they're sending me like my MyFitnessPal like macros. Like, John, what can I do? Like, I'm like, oh my god, like it is funny. And then it's like, I know what you guys are doing this weekend. Like, this is all gonna kind of go out the window a little bit. So like, it's funny. But yeah, I do get that a lot. They're trying to, or I need to do like this massive HIIT workout so I can deserve this piece of dessert or whatever for dinner tonight. Like, okay, justify your workouts to justify something else. Like, it's hysterical.
Yeah. Oh man. On a more serious note, we'll get back. Is there anything right now that you've been looking into maybe a little bit more than in the past, like research-wise, related to nutrition that's been kind of interesting you?
Yeah, so actually, I don't know if it pertains really to like an area of like research, or it's just like so there's this company called Levels Health, and I guess this is me kind of giving them a shout out. But so they're they linked up with this company in Abbott, or Libre Link. If I butchered that, my apologies if someone's from that company or whoever's listening to this. But it's a continuous glucose monitor. And so this company, Levels Health, is partnered up with them. And all you do is just like wear this, sorry, I'm wearing long sleeves, but you wear this patch on your arm. You kind of look like a cyborg. So you look a little out there. Like my fiance hates it. It's like, oh my God, like why? Take that thing off your arm. You look crazy. But it's an awesome tool to be able to like, and I tell you what, man, it is one of the most eye-opening experiences to look at how your body responds to certain types of food. So all you do is just like take your phone, go to like the app, scan the sensor, and it shoots you your blood glucose at that given time. Because like some people, when they go in for like blood work or wherever, like once every 3 months or something like that, like your blood glucose is just like your glucose in that's second. It doesn't give you like a snapshot of like overall, which I think this is an awesome resource that kind of gives you a picture of like your metabolic efficiency, flexibility, or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? So and I'll kind of give you where I'm going with this. So, I think as dietitians, as nutritionists, we always have like our fallbacks. You know what I'm saying? Like, eat oatmeal because it's low glycemic. It helps, you're not going to have a big blood sugar response and you're not, all that stuff. But like, I tell you what, I had overnight oats one time. And it was just like Greek yogurt, oatmeal, whey protein powder. It was like 3 simple ingredients. And my blood sugar skyrocketed. Like I just did not have like a good response to it. Now, granted, there's a lot of things that probably could have gone into that in terms of like, sleep was bad and maybe more stressed or whatever. But like, I think the great thing about this tool is it kind of weeds that part out where it's just like there's nothing that's blanketed. Someone on the vertical diet, let's throw that in there, but may respond really bad to it from a blood sugar standpoint. Someone may respond terribly to some other type of diet. Like for me, I don't tolerate sweet potatoes that well. Does that mean I'm going to completely omit it from my diet? No, not at all. I may, from an acute chronic standpoint, I may eat things more acutely than I do chronically. You know what I mean? So this tool has been, like I said, one of the most eye-opening experiences, just to be able to see like how you respond to certain types of foods, and also just get a feel of like how you feel after eating certain types of things. Because I've noticed like when I go from like, say my blood sugar is like 90 and then it goes up to like 180 like that, and then it drops back down to like in the 70s. Okay, you're having reactive hypoglycemia. You start to feel it. You're like, okay, I feel like I could eat again. I don't feel too great and kind of a little bit foggier. You know what I mean? And of course, this is anecdotal. This is myself. Someone on this like thing may feel completely different or have a different response. But like, I think there's a lot to that, and I think that could be, not the new wave of like nutrition, but I think it's something that could definitely trend, just because it gets away from a lot of the blanketed stuff. And when I was getting like, on this like beta study, or not beta study, but like their trial, like they were showing me the difference of how people like respond differently to like a banana or like a cookie, even was like one of their examples. And someone has like a flat line and someone spikes and then comes way back down. So it's like, for me, if I were to have this, and granted this isn't, as applicable in a team style setting, I'm not going to have football players like, stick this thing on and be like, yeah, I'm going to, scan my phone 1,000 times a day. But like, obviously someone's like looking to make changes, or like you want, someone's not responding well to something you want to see. It's a great resource and it's a great tool to like be able to look at on a more in-depth scale, like how they're responding throughout the day. Like I've seen through myself too, like if I eat like a massive carbohydrate type meal before like I go to bed, like I have a big drop like in the middle of the night. And I notice that myself because like I fall asleep on the couch before I go to bed, and like I wake up and I'm like sweaty and like, okay, like this kind of makes sense. Every time I wake up, I look back at my, graph, and I like, okay, this is when I'm having, going below 70, I'm having a little bit of a, hypoglycemic episode, and so it's, sorry to get long-winded on it, but like it's wild. Like it's crazy to see like how you're actually reacting to, your meals, which I think is a big thing, because like I said, like dietitians, nutritionists, like we get so like in our little like our go-tos and saying like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this or this or this or that. I'm not saying that that's everyone, but I just think you can just get like, one-sided in that aspect, whereas this is kind of like an eye-opening experience. And it also teaches you too, like how to eat, like having mixed meals, like mixing everything together versus like eating like proteins first, vegetables and carbohydrates, has a completely different like response than like if you were to eat everything together. Like it's crazy.
That's interesting.
Or like going on the 10-minute walks. I mean, that's crazy to see too.
Really?
Yeah. It's interesting.
Huh. Is this something you can wear during exercise? Like, do you keep it on all the time?
Yeah. I mean, I've had some trouble with it just because, like, and they say it themselves, like, it's not perfect, like, and they're looking for solutions to have it stay on, but like, they have this thing called like the active patch, and it's similar to like kinesio tape, where you just put it on and it just like stays on. You kind of at first like it looks like a nicotine patch a little bit, but yeah, it's something that you can wear. you can swim with it even. I try not to get it too wet just because like for me, like it comes off real easily, especially if like you're really sweaty or whatever. But yeah, man, it's an awesome resource. It's
Hmm,
really cool.
that's sick.
Yeah, if anything, it just speaks to the nuance of, if you've got, like you said, you got your go-tos, and if a player comes back and like, hey, I tried out that go-to and it felt like shit, like
Yeah,
not jumping to like, well, you're the problem. Like, it's like, well, maybe there are actually differences, and we're seeing these through, you know,
right.
the research.
Yeah, and then to go on top of that too, that's where like another big thing with me, it's like trust and build a relationship with the players is you need to be able to see their side too. Like not I mean, you need to hear their side. Like you want them to be heard and like you want them to have a voice in like their nutrition too, because ultimately they're going to have ownership in it. You can't be the one that kind of micromanages and like controls every aspect of it. So if they're saying something's not working and they're the type of person that like they stay on top of their stuff, like obviously like go back to the drawing board and figure out what's going to work for them specifically. Because like I think I touched on it earlier, like for them, like they're the ones that are ultimately going to dictate the long-term like success of like their nutrition or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm wondering your thoughts on it. I mean, obviously, you kind of pointed to it with psychologically, there's probably something there for them to want to believe in. But I
Right.
forgot where I read it, and it was a few years ago. There was a study that someone did where they gave guys like a bunch of placebo pills, and they told them that they were on anabolic steroids, and like the guys believed it so much that their like levels actually increased and strength numbers went through the roof. And then it was like a 4-week study. At the end, they told them, no, you're not actually taking anything. And then everything went straight back down to normal. And it was just like the power of belief amongst whatever it is that you're eating, taking. It's like, I need to eat 12 oranges a day because my vitamin C is the most important thing ever. And then somehow it magically tricks them into like being healthier maybe than if they're like, I don't know about this whole balanced diet thing.
Right. And I think it's too like where how you pitch something to someone as well. Not that you're trying to be like a crazy salesman by any means, but like a lot of this role too is like the reinforcement with it. Not like you need to be like a cheerleader and like, yeah, you can do it, man. But like um yeah, just like being there to help them through that and just being able to like I don't know, be that person that's gonna be able to like talk them through like, yeah, like you need to stay on top of it. You need to do it like it's gonna come, like the results will show, like and so on and so forth. Not like it needs to be that scripted or whatever, but like um but I'm not saying you need to lie to them either. Like, yeah, you're taking anabolic steroids. Yeah, but just like yeah, just have pitch something to someone, that psychological aspect. Like if they're always like down about something, like you can't match that. Okay, you need to have that positivity a little bit and just kind of pump them up a little bit. You know what I mean? Because that psychological part does play a massive role in like how they're going to respond, how they feel, and ultimately just how they carry themselves. And that ultimately dictates like body language too and all that kind of stuff. Not to get like into like too far in the weeds on like that part of it, but like I mean every little bit helps. Every little bit plays a role, and it's all synergistic in that aspect.
Yeah. So I guess getting maybe a little more technical. Um, I mean, both NCAA and the pro settings are going to be slightly different in terms of regulations. But if
Yeah.
I'm a player and I come in, hey, John, I got this great new supplement I want to try out. What sort of like vetting process, essentially, and maybe not without any company names or anything like that, but what sort of vetting process do you go through if somebody says, hey, I'm going to take this? Is it safe, allowed, within the rules or whatever that may be? What sort of steps do you take?
So like especially if they're coming up with like a supplement, I always like to know where they heard the information from.
Hmm.
Like obviously like we know creatine and all that kind of stuff too. Like it's not something I'm like super like inquisitive on, but like if they're bringing me something, I'm like, well, why? why are you looking to specifically take something? And they give me the reason, like, I don't want to get bigger, faster, stronger. Like, then it's like, well, like, well, how's your nutrition? Like, we got to fix like nutrition first before we fix like anything else. And like, normally that's not the answer they want to hear. But at the same time, like, you can't always just be the yes man, because then that's where like you're kind of a pushover a little bit. But like, I also believe too, you have to have stuff that you recommend.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just be the completely dismissive person like, no, food first over supplementation. Like, yes, that's what we want ultimately, but at the same time, like, you got to be able to build a relationship and all that stuff and have them trust you to be able to come up with that stuff. So like, number one, you should feel like, very good that they're coming up to you and asking you about supplements, because sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes they just do whatever on their own. So like,
Mm-hmm.
but I try and ask them like, why do you want to take this specific supplement? Like, what are you trying to we fix with food that also helps with it as well? Number two, I like to look at like, is it third party tested? Because a lot of the times they have no idea what that means. You say third party tested, they're gonna be like, what? I have no idea what that means. So you always look for like, your NSF stamps, so the National Sanitation Foundation, Informed Choice, Informed Sport, looking at those, supplements that, have that third party certification to show like, okay, whatever's listed on here is actually in this label. And if it's certified for sport, that means that, there's no banned substances in here. But I always tell them like, just because it always has this label on here, it's an insurance that like, okay, it's a relatively safe supplement, but that doesn't mean it's a cure-all. That doesn't make it a great supplement. It just means that whatever's listed on the nutrition or supplement bags is actually in there. You're not just buying $80 worth of powdered sugar. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the process that I go through, but it's just, I try to educate them on the front end about supplements. It's like one of the like pillars or part of the philosophy is just like, I think guys just need, especially at this level, like they need to have that understanding of what, the education of supplements. They need to understand the third party certification and like the risks that, go with taking supplements. You're always going to run the risk with taking supplements. But at the same time, like you guys need to understand too, that like a lot of the things that you're wanting to achieve, you can fix through just having a balanced and varied diet. You know what I mean? But like, obviously, like some guys hate vegetables. Okay, well, there's other ways of getting it. If you don't, you can get it through a smoothie. So let's blend it. Okay, well, you don't like that part of it. Let's find some form of supplementation that can help fix this, not issue or problem, but like help, resolve something, help you accomplish some goal that we're trying to achieve. That's what I'm trying to say. Into that avenue, something that's going to fit their routine, something that that they're going to do. Just kind of work with it from that sense. But just to recap, like it's just for me, it's just kind of quizzing them a little bit, trying to see what they know, where they've heard the information, why they want to do it specifically. Is there anything that they're saying in their mind, like why they want to take the supplement that you can try and achieve through food? But if not, then obviously, having that recommendation, okay, say this is a bad, not a safe supplement. There's no testing. It's just some random thing. Okay, I see what you're trying to do here. Here's a better alternative. But here's what I also want. Here's what we need to work on too, from a food standpoint. Let's try, let's try this one thing as well, and then let's build upon that. And usually it's like, okay, great, yeah, let's do it. Because in their mind it's like, okay, I got what I came for. Now I'm on now I'm on a supplement. In their mind, that psychology part of it, okay, now I'm going to be taking a supplement. Because if they leave you saying like, oh shoot, now it's like I got nothing, then it's like, okay, they're probably not going to do what you even told them to do. You know what I'm saying? So I think to me, that's kind of how I go through that vetting process, is just trying to get a little bit more, peel back the onion layers a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was it? I don't remember if it was in the vertical diet or if it's Wendler that says it, of like, if you're not sleeping 8 hours a night and then you're expecting like this giant supplement list to help you out, like you're kind of screwing yourself over here.
The vertical diet. It's like if you're expecting like to, oh God, what is it? I think when they talk about creatine, if
Yeah.
you're supplementing with creatine, you're only getting 6 hours of sleep in the day. Like, forget about it.
Yeah.
Shakes are for fakes.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But yeah, I mean that's true because it's like they're always trying to look for that like competitive edge, if you will, and it's just like, dude, you have to fix your lifestyle first, your routine, and that's why the routine part of it to me is such a big deal. Where it's like, what time you're going to bed, what time you're waking up, what time are your meals, like routines within routines. Like, what is your meal routine? Are you getting, the things that you need to on your plate every single day? That's going to add up over time. Because it's like, if you're not doing that stuff and you're trying to take creatine and doing all this crazy stuff and not eating enough, then again, you're not going to see the results that you ultimately want to. General population nutrition is so different from like athletic nutrition. It's like, they see the stuff that like could potentially work for like the general population, but it's like, that doesn't pertain to you. I always use like intermittent fasting is kind of like I guess that's my go-to for like comparing to something, but like, that really doesn't pertain to you right now. Like, you can't do that. Not saying you can't, but like, it's not ideal for you. That's not meant for you. Is there a time and a place maybe in the year, maybe early off season that could maybe benefit you? Yes, but it's not a long-term thing that you want to do. But it's not like I'm going out and posting, handouts or signs like, hey guys, in January or February, whenever the season's over, everyone follow intermittent fasting because it's going to help for these reasons, But if a guy came up to me and said, hey, like, I've heard about intermittent fasting, I've looked into it myself, what are your thoughts on it? That's where it's like you have that conversation with them, that open dialogue of like, well, what do you know about it? Okay, what did you hear? What did you read? What are the resources? Is it, some random blog that you heard it on? Or, why do you think it's going to benefit you? And if they list off the reasons, yeah, again, it's like, okay, I see where you're coming from. You're right on this part. This is where it's a little tricky. Here's how, do you understand the, like, not consequences, but do you understand like the negatives of it too? And usually like they don't think about that part because that's never listed in media as like, okay, like intermittent fasting, you're gonna be hungry as hell first couple of days. You're gonna feel miserable. You might feel lightheaded, like so on and so forth. And because you're just not used to it, and they're usually like, okay, yeah, nah, I didn't think about that. But then some guys might be receptive to it. And it's also like the same thing with like vegan or like when they watch like Game Changers. Game Changers just highlighted confirmation bias of all positive things of being on a plant-based diet. But there's nothing wrong with being on a plant-based diet. There's nothing wrong with, being on following more of a plant-based diet or like having plant-based shakes or something. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. But it's just like, when you're saying that this is the only thing that someone should do, that's what I have an issue with. When you just completely discredit all the other stuff, and it's just like, God, man, like, God, when that came out, it was like, all right, everyone was like, what are your thoughts on being more plant-based? Like, I think it's beneficial to eat more plants. And it's like, at the end of the day, that's what the documentary is saying. Like, at the end of the day, eat more fruits and vegetables. Like, duh. That's always been the main emphasis with like nutrition and dietitians and everything. And it's like, well, all these people are having great results with it. It's like, because they're eating far less bad stuff. Like, okay, but they're not going to say that because that's getting away from like their message. But yeah, I mean, sorry, I kind of lost track there, but like that's and that's what we have to deal with a lot too, is like always debunking type things and like, and trying to educate them that way, because like a lot of the stuff in the media, like I said, is just, it's so like positives. It never gives you the like, all right, here's the consequences of it. Here's how you're going to feel. Here's what's going to happen or something.
Yeah, there's a reason all those prescription drug commercials speed through all the possible negatives of it.
Yeah.
There's a reason they play it at like 5 times speed.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing too is like having a lot of people don't have even like the slightest general idea of even like marketing. My mom falls prey to this all the time of like, oh, I was reading about this kind of product and they say it's going to help with all this. And I was like, did you read it from the company that's going to make money if you buy that product? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, so do you think they're trying to maybe have you just buy their product so they can make money? She's like, oh yeah, that's probably true, huh? I was like, yeah, that's what it is.
100%. 100%. Yeah, it's like the people that make like these documentaries. They're biased.
Yep.
100%. So, yeah.
Yeah. Or anything that comes out that's, whatever, cheese is the best thing in the world, or eggs are the devil, or anything. You just go to who funded the study, and
There's your answer.
oh yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's like electrolyte filled fluid is better than water for rehydration, funded by Gatorade. And you're like, oh, okay, sounds good.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's no wonder like a lot of people, just have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
But that's why it's important to have like I think like a dietitian or a nutrition on staff, so it's like they can like look into a lot of that kind of stuff and just be able to be like, I don't want to say it's like the expert go-to type thing where it's just like, it's like you have someone that understands like a lot of the language. Like I can't open up a strength conditioning book and like understand every variable that goes into it or whatever. It's like a lot of that stuff sometimes could be like way over my head, and I'm like, I don't know. But it's like same thing with like nutrition. Like some like strength conditioning coaches or like people, athletic trainers, might have a general understanding but don't know the in-depth detail or resources to look into to like understand that part of it. Like, okay, this is where it's coming from, but here's truths, not truths, myths, half truths or whatever you want to call it, like that are part of like this study, information, documentary, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think that's where, I mean, every department could benefit from having people who are like the subject matter closer to experts. That way it's like once everyone learns the basic principles from that person about their realm, they can all like help each other out way more. It's like, oh, I can reinforce sports nutrition's message on some of these principles, but when it comes to individualizing things a bit more, I know that I need to refer out to you. And the same the other way of like you explaining, oh, well, this is why you strength train. Like, here's the basic idea. If you want a better idea, go talk to them. Like, makes for a more cohesive team.
Exactly. And everyone feeds off of that too.
Yeah.
Making it cohesive.
For sure. Cool. I think we're got through all our questions. Yeah. We're at like an hour 5, so that's about perfect.
Yeah.
We can just do like a clean ending, and then we'll stop recording and we can pop off. So.
Perfect.
All righty. All right, John. Thanks for coming on. I know this was something we were looking forward to, and you're definitely somebody we always wanted to have on, both from your knowledge standpoint and just we've always had fun chatting with you. So thanks.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely.